Emma had always walked home from school alone. It wasn't a long walk, just 15 minutes through a quiet neighborhood, past an old abandoned house, and then a short path through the woods. She had done it hundreds of times before. It was safe, it was normal, until the day it wasn't. It was a chilly autumn evening, the kind where the wind carried dry leaves across the cracked sidewalks. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deep shades of orange and purple. Emma pulled her jacket tighter around herself and quickened her pace. The streetlights flickered on, casting long shadows across the pavement. As she neared the abandoned house, a chill ran down her spine. The place had been empty for years, its windows shattered, its wooden walls covered in peeling paint. Kids at school whispered that it was haunted, but Emma had never believed in ghost stories. That was when she heard it. Footsteps. Soft, measured, behind her. She stopped abruptly, heart pounding in her chest. Turning her head slightly, she glanced over her shoulder. Nothing, just the empty sidewalk stretching behind her. The wind rustled the dead leaves, making them skitter across the ground. She shook her head. She was just being paranoid. Emma kept walking, but the sense of unease lingered. When she reached the narrow path leading through the woods, she hesitated. The trees stood tall and bare, their twisted branches reaching toward the darkening sky. The wind whispered through them, carrying an eerie hush. She stepped onto the path, her shoes crunching against the gravel. The shadows were deep here, swallowing the last remnants of daylight. Halfway through, she heard the sound again. Footsteps, closer this time. Her breath hitched. She turned quickly. Again, nothing. "Hello?" she called, her voice barely more than a whisper. Silence. The wind sighed through the trees, but there was something else. A faint rustling, like someone shifting their weight just beyond her sight. She tightened her grip on her backpack strap and took a cautious step forward. A twig snapped behind her. She ran. Her feet pounded against the dirt path, heart hammering in her chest. The trees blurred around her as she sprinted, breath coming in ragged gasps. She could hear the footsteps now, matching hers, gaining on her. Her house was just beyond the woods. If she could reach the back gate, she'd be safe. Something cold and brushed against the back of her neck. She let out a strangled scream, bursting out of the woods and onto the sidewalk in front of her house. She didn't stop until she was inside, slamming the door shut and locking it. Her chest heaved as she pressed her back against the door, listening. Silence. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Maybe she had imagined it. Maybe it was just the wind, the paranoia playing tricks on her. Then a soft knocking at the door. Emma's breath caught in her throat. The porch light was off, and through the peephole she could only see darkness. The knocking came again, slow, deliberate, and then a whisper. "Emma, you forgot to say goodbye?" Her blood turned to ice. She staggered backward, her hands trembling as she reached for her phone. The screen was dark, no service, no Wi-Fi. Just as she turned toward the living room, something scratched against the front door, long, deliberate scratches. They knew she was inside. A sharp tap came from the window beside the door. Emma's breath came in short, shallow gasps. She didn't want to look, but she couldn't stop herself. Slowly, she turned her head. A pale Urvesi stared at her from the other side of the glass. Its eyes were sunken, hollow pits of darkness. Its lips curled into an unnatural grin, revealing teeth too sharp, too long. Emma's stomach lurched as she stumbled backward, her heart hammering against her ribs. The thing outside tilted its head, its bony fingers pressing against the glass. Then, in a slow, deliberate motion, it lifted one hand and pointed at the lock. Emma whimpered, shaking her head. "Number no, please." The lights flickered. The air in the room grew heavy, pressing against her chest. Then, click. Her breath hitched. She hadn't moved. She hadn't touched the door. The lock had turned on its own. The handle twisted. Emma screamed.